I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 2, recorded on June 23rd, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is Includer. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window, right down there. If you're on our live page, we'd love to have you log in. Just go to the bottom left-hand corner, click Log In, put your name, choose the guest option, put your name where it says Guest, take out the numbers, we don't need those, and hit Submit, and we'll know who you are. It's the best way to get your questions in during live, and we'd love to have you do that with us. If you're listening to the recorded version or you need custom strengths coaching solutions for small would be okay too, but small, medium, or large organizations, contact us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center. Just gallupstrengthcenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video both streaming and now downloadable audio for offline listening. I cannot emphasize enough the ability to recapture that time you're in a car, on a train, in a plane, traveling, walking the dog, whatever you're doing. Get that on your phone, put it in your ears, listen to us when you're doing those things, and recapture that time. It's just a great time to catch up on all that we're doing. A lot of people say to me, Jim, I don't have 45 minutes to listen to a show. And at first I say, man, lighten up your schedule a little bit if you don't have 45 minutes to give it. But two, recapture some of that time that you're traveling, and it's often a good time to get your professional development in. So all those options are available for you on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Micah Liebert is our host today. She's my favorite learning and development consultant. And we have some new ones, Micah, on the riverfront. So you've got some competition coming in. We've been hiring a bunch more, but great to see you and welcome to Theme Thursday.
Thanks. I welcome the competition. It's friendly competition. We've got some awesome new learning and development consultants that I'm excited that our people get to be exposed to.
Yeah, no, it's a good time to be at Gallup, and there's some tremendous growth going on right now inside the organization. Of course, we're excited about the CliftonStrengths Summit that's coming up here July 18th, 19th, and 20th. Micah, we got our own little internal team lunch scheduled. I'm so excited to get everybody pulled together because we're all over the place, right? You're out there. Stephanie's out in D.C. We have a small team here, so it'll be nice to get everybody together. Of course, we are looking forward to seeing all the coaches that will come. You might be listening to this after the Strength Summit. That's okay. We'll probably have another one next year, so you might want to start getting ready for that one if you've already missed it. But today, the reason I say that is because they were talking about Includer. We want everybody to be involved in all the things that we're doing. It's much deeper than that, and I'm kind of excited to dig into it as we think about Includer. So, Micah, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, Includer's a fantastic theme. It really is about making the circle wider. When I was trying to boil this really down to its essence this morning to post onto Instagram, I came up with Includer believes everyone is an insider. And I thought that was a great point to bring up, Jim, about wanting to include people and meet everybody at the CliftonStrengths Summit. If you're listening to this afterwards, thank you for coming because Includer likes sort of the both sides of it. It's sort of tireless pursuit of others, making them feel like they're part of your circle, but it's also the appreciation of people who I think step up and become part of something. So it's an open-mindedness and probably an open socialness as well.
Yeah, it is, and I'm anxious to dig into this because I probably know the least about it. I mentioned it last week that my admin at one point in time has Includer number 1, and she was always really good at when I was planning things at making sure that everyone got invited or was on the invite list. She really bothered her if somebody got left out from that standpoint. But when we think about, did you talk about the definition? Sorry, I got trapped in the chat room. Did you go over the definition?
Not quite yet. And I am pretty excited to talk about it today as well. Jim, I don't know how we're going to do because I was just going to say sort of the same thing. I feel like I don't fully understand a ton about Includer. If I were to choose any out of all 34, and I've been working with StrengthsFinder for a decade and a half, I still feel like Includer maybe is one of the more elusive ones to me, and that could be because it sounds like such a simple definition. But I really do believe when you meet people with Includer, there's so much more to it. Here's what it sounds like if you look at the short definition. People exceptionally talented in the Includer theme accept others. They show awareness of those who feel left out, and they make an effort to include them. And that sounds simple, so perhaps it's one, for that simplicity's sake, that I personally at least haven't really dived into that much. That being said, I do have an includer at number 11, and the best way that I've ever understood it was when my strengths coach, Kristen, was first going through my initial StrengthsFinder report with me, and I said, I don't really understand this includer here. What is this? And first she helped me understand that, okay, if it's not, one of those super top themes for you, it might be a supporting theme. It might not, walk through the door first. Perhaps for you, Micah, it affects your understanding of what you're communicating out there. So I have communication and strategic really high. And she talked about my includer almost being like that filter that says what I put out there into the world needs to fit and land despite any sort of diversity of opinion or human origin. And that includer can expand my awareness of how well the ideas and the stories and the nuggets of information that I put out, how likely those are to be taken up by a diverse audience. I just thought that's a great way to sort of describe how includer supports, for me personally, as a supporting theme rather than a dominant theme. But when you have it in a dominant theme, and I've done a lot of work trying to really unpack includer so that today we can all land on the same love for this theme and have a common understanding of what it is, gosh, it's powerful. When you look at people who have includer and you get to work alongside them, they've got almost this magical ability. I don't want to make it sound too whimsical, but it is an innate, a sense-driven ability to make people feel like they're part of something. And that leads to richer conversations, to probably enhanced performance and productivity, and to ideas being shared more freely. So when I think about people with high includer, they, a couple words to describe them: tolerant, inviting, welcoming, aware. And if you look at the power and edge that we have here on our companion guide, it sounds like this. Includers are sensitive to those who are excluded and have an innate desire and capacity to bring them into the group. Their thoughtful approach to others not only increases participation and communication as they ensure everyone is considered, but it also brings a level of tolerance and acceptance of diversity. What a beautiful theme.
Yeah, and I like that last part about tolerance and diversity. And I think a lot of times we miss in those areas. I am moving so fast from a arranging, activating standpoint, and I've got high woo, but I don't think oftentimes about the wake that I'm leaving behind me and the people I'm leaving behind me. I think in its raw form, often I left people behind. Or it's probably more of a basement when we think about from a negative standpoint, is I would just push forward and leave people behind. And it was great for me to partner with someone who had included to really kind of teach me, Jim, you need to bring people along with you, not leave them in your wake. We've got, let's dig in a little bit when we think about raw versus mature. We've got some of those states. I think this will unpack it even more.
Yeah, so I think about people with high includer having their radar constantly on, their eyes and ears open in 360 degrees. So what they're listening for and sensing for is other people who might not be directly in front of them. And that might mean groups of people, that might mean entire populations. It also might mean just actual people. So it might be the kid at a birthday party who notices that somebody else is not playing and physically gets up and goes and shares a toy to bring them in to experience some of the same happiness that's there. It might also be the reporter who's doing a story about who's doing a story and wants to make sure that they highlight minorities within the population that they're explaining things to, so that they can really open things up a little bit more psychologically. That openness and that constant awareness, that radar that's always on to who's beyond the person in front of me, in a raw state could sound like I need to be included. So if you think about it being in, whether that's a developmental sort of piece or maybe just where you are, I often think that people who are aware of exclusion, sometimes that can focus just on themselves. And if it stops at that point, it probably can be a barrier to others or can be seen as a weakness. Sometimes includer can come across as I'm feeling excluded because you're hyper aware of exclusion, and that can be pointed toward yourself. The mature side of that is I feel connected. So rather than saying, gosh, you're not including me, I think people with high includer can say, you might not intentionally be including me, but I still feel like I'm a part of it. And so I think there's a patience to it there. Raw includer could also look like everyone is invited, so no one is special. Sometimes my includer creeps into my dominant themes that way in sort of the raw aspect of it, where I'll be throwing a party and I will run into somebody that nobody else at the party even knows, and I run into them in the grocery store and I say, hey, I need you to come on over. And they show up and they realize, wow, I'm suddenly one of 50 people, and I don't feel like this invitation was special to me. So raw is everyone is invited, no one is special. Mature is everyone is special and therefore invited. So what I could have done in that situation instead was to say, hey, I've got a bunch of friends getting together and I really want you to get to know them because of XYZ. And that probably would have headed off the sort of indiscriminate bring everybody together piece that doesn't land too well with everybody.
Debbie makes a good point in chat. She says raw includer invites too many people to a meeting. Mature consider who needs to be there, and if someone doesn't, who needs to be there, and if someone doesn't need to be there, we'll brief those not present afterward. And so kind of that, the thinking through, like, we only need these people in this role, and I will do some briefing of those to make it more efficient, save time, that kind of deal.
Yeah, and I like the strategy to that. So one of the things I'd written down here was raw includer is everyone every time, whereas mature includer is the right people at the right time. And I think that there's an and beyond that. It's not just being choosy, being selective. It is starting from that openness. That's includer. So realizing that I've got an entire group of people to choose from, and they all might have a connection to what this meeting is about. So then let me figure out who needs to be there, who needs to be present during. And I love your piece about who can I brief later. The includer might also think, what's the very best way for me to make people feel like they're a part of something, even if they don't have to be directly involved.
Yeah, it's really an enhancer. When we're talking about this, I always think of it enhancing other themes as well, making them really, really powerful. I add a ranger to this. We're going to talk about those here in a few minutes, but add a ranger. I heard strategic in what you were saying there, right? This includer with a strategic bent is very good at making sure the right people are in the right place at the right time, doing the right things, but also that those that aren't included have a purpose, and maybe there needs to be something done with them, not as much as with this group, but it's that strategic bent.
Yeah. What I started to see in my mind's eye as we were talking about this is when I lived in the UK, we had bats in our house. And we dealt with these bats for a very long time, and they're a protected species. You cannot really do much about it. So I started to figure out, how do I get okay with the fact that there's a flying rodent living in my home? What I did that I shouldn't have done was I Googled the type of bat that the guys who came to try and take care of it said it was. It was called a whispering bat. And if you Google whispering bat, it's got ears that go out completely out over its head, almost like giant bunny ears, except they're cone-shaped, and they sort of, you can tell that this bat can hear everything. And I think about maybe if you had some includer ears that you could put on, that would help you widen your circle, widen your awareness. So take your ranger and put on your bat ears. It makes you a little bit more aware. It's expanding your social awareness. It's expanding your social thoughtfulness. It's expanding that ability to build relationships by making people feel welcome, feel invited. It's like putting on a hospitality hat, I think, to some of these other themes. It can certainly enhance, enliven, and even speed up some of the effectiveness of some of the other themes.
Yeah, and think about that with individualization then. And those two working together, that's pretty super powerful. What else? When we think of raw, mature, what else?
I think sometimes raw and mature, again, isn't bad or good. Sometimes it's just underdeveloped versus used in a productive way. So sometimes raw could just be awareness of exclusion, and mature could be action on exclusion. So that almost like, I think we talked about something similar when we discussed connectedness on, you might be sort of sensing that something's happening but not quite able to put it into words. I think that's similar with includer. You're aware of maybe some wrongdoing, maybe some segregation, maybe some unnecessary exclusion of people, and it might just kind of rub at you. I don't think that's mature until you figure out a way to do something about that.
Interesting. I think when we think about strength spotting, so we talk about this in our new strength-based parenting book. As we look at kids, might be too young to take Strengths Explorer, Strengths Finder, and we begin to do this. I think these kinds of children are easy to see in public settings because they're the ones who gravitate towards those who are left out. They're always trying to bring them back in, like someone over there. Johnny. We always use that name. Johnny's over there by himself. You see those with Includer gravitate towards them to try and bring them back into the group, or to just stay with them and say, we don't need to be in the group. We can have our own group right here, right? And so an easy strength spotting exercise, I think Includer is one of those easy ones to see in kids.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy to see kids sort of get drawn towards social justice, I think, as well, and think about what are they doing, who are they standing up for, not just who are they sitting with in the lunchroom, but what sort of causes are they drawn to, and that could be a way to spot Includer as well.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, raw versus mature?
I think, just to summarize raw versus mature, I think raw Includer is indiscriminate, and mature Includer is thoughtful.
Yeah. When you say indiscriminate, what do you mean by that?
I mean the fire hose of include absolutely everybody all the time, versus the thoughtful piece of how do I use my ability to see the circle, to make the circle wider, in order to enhance what we're working on, enhance who we're working with. So that thoughtful approach, like we talked about with getting the right people in the meeting at the right time, or being able to understand how can you draw out people's opinions in a group setting, rather than just standing up and saying someone's being excluded. The thoughtful approach of saying how can I bring everyone into the fold who needs to be here.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier when I talked about individualization as a powerful theme that's paired with it. When we think about it in a complementary standpoint, Micah, what are your thoughts on that?
We must have been on the same brain waves this morning, Jim, because I actually thought about individualization as being a great complement. So somebody with Includer, having a partner with individualization, I think what they bring that would be different is individualization is drawn to difference. And excited about difference, and sees treating people differently because people are different is the only way to be fair and to honor those, and to honor people. Whereas Includer doesn't see differences quite so much. Includer is drawn to, here's our commonalities, here's why we should all be together, and it honestly sort of gets driven towards sameness and unity. I think if you had these in two partners who were working together and you were aware of it and you talked about it and you expected each other to bring those different perspectives, you could have a beautiful partnership here. What individualization could bring to Includer is to help communicate the value of the differences. So back to the example of inviting the right people to the meeting. Somebody with individualization, I think, could take that even further and say, Micah needs to be in this meeting, but I know that her calendar is totally booked and she doesn't do very well in planning meetings, so why don't we follow up with her individually? Being able to say not just why do you need to be there because I want to include you, but being able to say what is the unique way that I need to communicate with you in order to make you feel included.
Yeah, is that a confession? Are you confessing right now, Micah?
Or was that me saying I don't like to be in planning meetings? Yeah. Shocker. Yeah, I hate them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't hate them. I just need them to be really close to the time that I need to do them. So I go to them, and I take really good notes because chances are I'll forget if I don't take notes. And then I make the notes pop up in Outlook at a later time.
Yeah, and I find even for me sometimes that doesn't work. I get the pop-up and I'm like, I still don't want to do it, even though I've put it there. So interesting. When we think about likely and unlikely pairs, I'm a little. This is an interesting part. As I looked ahead at some of these, I think there's some really good stuff to dig out. So let's look at likely pairings first. Go with Includer.
And this comes from just statistically likely. So this isn't maybe what seems like it should go. This is just when we have a representative sample of the population, how many of them show up with Includer in their top 5. About 38% have positivity as well. Positivity is a very dramatic theme. It's about being able to affect the way that other people feel and caring that way is good. So it's seeing the glass as half full, but also helping other people see the glass as half full. I think about maybe the similarities between these two. Positivity is I notice how people feel. Includer is I think about people fitting in. So you can see, when you know that if you're somebody who believes that fitting in makes people feel good, what a great tool or an arm or a vehicle for your positivity. So includer could go out there and say, hey, come on in. This will make you feel better. And it's a beautiful marriage there. I think that both positivity and includer are very others-focused. They are certainly driven and motivated by being aware of how other people feel, what other people think, where other people are, and affecting that in a positive way. So I guess to me it certainly makes sense that those two go together. You could absolutely have one without the other. Includer without positivity might look a little less cheerleadery, maybe a little less energetic. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I have positivity in my top 5, and I know that sometimes it can come across as a real quickness to energy. I think includer without positivity is probably the person who knows the name of every single person in their organization and something about them and can make them feel like they're connected in some way. So not in the same way that individualization would, but understanding what is the commonality that everybody has with the larger group. Positivity without includer is probably let me focus on you, and it might be a little bit more singular rather than focusing on how do you fit into part of the group.
Yeah, as we look at the most or the least likely pair in here, I think this is not a shocker to anybody.
I don't think it's a shocker. I honestly see actually maybe some similarity between these two. The theme that's the least likely to show up in your top 5 with includer is command. Happens 1% of the time. Let's also realize that when we go through least likely with any theme, command shows up a lot because it is the least likely theme to show up in our database. So it's not a shocker whenever I see command as the least likely, because it's just not very likely anyway. But I think about command is I create clarity, and includer is I create tolerance. And I think with includer there's some understanding of ambiguity, if you could say that, some tolerance of ambiguity, less of a need for clarity or progress even, whereas command wants a little bit more black and white, forward moving pieces. But I could also very easily understand having both of these together, and I think you would probably look like a leader of social justice, being somebody who says, hey, these people are excluded and here's what we're going to do about it, come and follow me. I think that perhaps, and this is just me sort of my conjecture here, I wonder if perhaps they don't show up together because they might look very similar, just coming from different motivations. So command could be the person who stands up and says, here's where we're going. Includer could also be the person. Includer could make you very bold and very courageous, almost look like command, if you notice something that's out and that needs to be included. So, to other people, I think maybe includer could even look like an influencing theme if you needed it to. So perhaps they're more alike than we think.
Yeah, and you could work it into that influencing from that. So you could work it. Depend on how the other 4 line up for you. So if you have heavy influencing in your other 4, it may begin to look influencing. In other words, you're doing this in public, right? Because there's kind of 2 ways to do includer. One would be to make it very public and say from the top of the mountain, everybody needs to be included. And then there's those behind the scenes that are quietly creating pockets of comfortableness, I guess is probably the way to say it, where others feel accepted and can be a part of the group and do what's going forward, right? So there's that can be done either way. It doesn't always have to be done one way or the other.
Oh, I love that. The pockets of comfort idea I think is great for includer. Includer doesn't have to have a stage at all. Includer can be, one-on-one, a hand on the shoulder saying, hey, how are you doing? I noticed that you might have been reacting to this in a certain way, or hey, I wanted to make sure that you felt invited. It doesn't need sort of that spotlight at all.
Yeah, I want to tell those folks in chat, we're not ignoring you, but I am having some trouble with my chat window. It's not updating properly. So you guys are having some great conversation out there. It's just as valid as what we're talking about here. I just want you to know that. But I am having some trouble with my chat window. So I apologize if we're not being as interactive with the chat room. Micah, some final thoughts as we kind of gear up for the theme dynamics portion.
Yeah, you know what? I think includer can be a great source of energy because includer gets excited by the opportunity to include others and brings energy to others. I think it's that quickness to make people feel comfortable. So perhaps, we talked about includer and positivity being the most likely to show up together. Perhaps those two almost look like woo, because it's that make the circle wider, make people feel great, bring energy to it. I think if you're coaching somebody with includer, great opportunities to help them use that in a productive way is to think about how can I help that person shrink the gap between insiders and those on the outside. Think about that visual of, wow, yeah, within this group, that might be my job, is to make that gap constantly smaller. And that might happen by helping them practice commonalities that they see, practice how to communicate commonalities, maybe practice strategies that they've used that have included people, and in what strategies really worked best. Was it for you? Was it doing the quiet one-on-one? Is it a more proactive approach? Are there times within a planning or a planning of a project that we really need to make sure we're inserting you so that you can put on your includer ears and say, okay, how do we make sure that we're being as inclusive and as diverse as we possibly can? I also think it's really important that we help includers describe the value, because to come back to that, talk about strength spotting with children. How awesome would it be if we could say, hey, I noticed that you made such and such, you made this person feel included when nobody else did. That's wonderful, but if you could go one step further and talk about what effect that had, maybe it's your inclusion of others is going to build participation in how they learn, or your inclusion of others is going to increase communication on our team, or it's going to speed up the buy-in that we have into this new initiative. Maybe think about the value of inclusiveness being increased tolerance, increased understanding, increased effectiveness with your client base. And I think being able to communicate what you bring to the table in terms of value to others, and other than just making them feel included, gives you all the more opportunity to do it on purpose and to do it as part of a strategic plan. When I'm coaching people with high includer, I like to think about what's the best way that they help other people be heard. Are there great platforms or great questions or great habits or structures where they have helped people get their message across? So I think inclusion can be not just about people, it can also be about information. So how do we help that information come out? What's your best process for sharing information? How can you help others develop great processes for sharing information? And then, finally, maybe it is also helping them think about when should you be selective. So when should you start with a really wide pool and then think about the right people at the right time? And certainly be able to harness that power and think about using it for the good of yourself and for the good of others.
Mike, I realized I just had a really includer moment. I was worried about the chat room, and it is not refreshing just for me, but it appears for a few others as well. So if you're having difficulty wondering, there is some great chat going on. You might have to manually refresh it just to kind of keep things going. We won't worry too much about it, but I realized that was a real includer moment as I was worried about everybody being able to see and participate in what we're doing here. So it's always funny how the chat room kind of takes on the persona of the theme for the day. We have some folks in the chat room who have been expressed very, very well. That includer, they're very passionate about it, and it's great to get that feedback. So we appreciate it. Micah, let me set up the theme dynamics. Why don't you just give your quick brief overview on what we're doing here?
Awesome. So what we're doing here is being able to realize that your includer is going to be tempered, play off of, expanded by, be affected by the other themes that are around it. So it's important for us to understand first pure includer, which is what we go through with the companion guide. But then it's also important for us to think about what changes includer, or how does includer change when we look at other Clifton Strengths Finder themes with it. So what we're about to look at here are the top 4 themes voted on at our Called to Coach Facebook page. Every week we throw up some themes there to start the voting, and then we invite you to add your own, and we take the top themes that are voted on. So what we're going to take a look at is, what does includer look like when it's paired with a couple other themes? And we're doing this by using the ebook Expanding Your Strengths by Kurt Liesfeld. If you purchase this book on Amazon, you get access to the app that we're going through right now, and you can use it as a drop-down menu here. I it is not a week goes by where I don't speak to a coach about theme dynamics and bring up this this tool, and they go good crazy. They just eat up the fact that you can have a drop-down menu to get to listen to Kurt's words about, how do I blend any one theme with any one other theme.
Micah, I did, just behind the scenes or inside baseball, so to speak. No, we will go international on this here pretty quick, so we're excited about that. Can't give you a date yet because I don't know it, but we are close to getting this international. So for those of you, almost weekly I get a note, Jim, when are we gonna be able to get this in? Fill in the name of the country that's not United States, UK, or Canada. And so we are close to having an option for you and are excited about that.
Here's my includer moment on that, Jim.
Yeah.
The word international always confuses me because I think, aren't we all in some way international? So right now, can you just say that? Right now it's US, Canada, UK?
Yep, those are the 3 markets it's in today.
And what we mean is beyond that will come soon.
Beyond those 3 markets, if you're in those markets, it should become available for you. Hopefully, we'll have it rolled out to most of the world here pretty quickly. We're excited to include everyone in that rollout. So let's the first pair, and it's funny, we always prime the pump with a few, and in the early days, the ones we primed with were the ones that almost always got selected. But I've been noticing lately there's been some jockeying, some what do you call it, campaigning for various themes, which we encourage, which is awesome. If you want to see those themes, jump in that post and get other people to vote for them. We allow you, like we say in voting in Chicago, vote early and vote often, and so it's one of those kinds of things. You can vote for as many as you like on there and add some if you don't see them. First group is includer and empathy.
Yeah, so I think it totally makes sense that these two bubbled up to the top, because I was surprised to see empathy wasn't the most common theme with includer. Because I think about these two, they're both relationship building themes. Empathy is about sensing how other people feel. When you think about it with includer, it's sensing how other people feel included. But it sounds like this. Your awareness of emotions and social dynamics enables you to know how people are feeling and notice those who are excluded. So I think about this as being intuition toward inclusion.
Yeah, and I think it's the 1-2 punch in the relationship building themes. When you have these two together, not only do you sense individuals, how they're feeling, but you also know their relationship to the group, or their relationship to the work effort, or their relationship to the whatever, fill in the blank for that. And so it's just pretty good 1-2 punch. That's pretty cool. Let's think about, I'm excited for this one too, includer and relator.
Yeah, so this one's, I think, really interesting because relator is not about widening the circle. Relator is about focusing on a really small circle of people who you count as soul-level friends. So relator is about depth of relationship and longevity of relationship. But again, they're both relationship-building themes, and if you had them both, it sounds like this. Socially inclusive. You see outsiders and welcome them into your circle. Socially selective, you invite friends into your heart. If you watch season 1 of Includer, you actually hear Kurt read this from his own notes before it had even been written, which I just think is a really cool moment. And you can see that these words are not from the tool itself. They are artistic interpretations from our good friend Kurt. But somebody asked him about these, and he talks about includer as being open and relator as being closed, not putting a judgment call on which of those is better. But imagine having both of them. It's almost as if you've got a flow chart or a process where these valves open and close. I think about it as I'm going to make everybody feel as if they are part of this and be able to go really deep with a few people. And there's power in the and there, being able to be open to the entire group and make people feel like they're a part of the group, and be selective with those people who you really let into your closest circle.
You mentioned Kurt, and a lot of folks, after Kurt's passing, said, I didn't really know him, I didn't get a chance to know him. Well, we've recorded 24 of these sessions with Kurt in Season 1. And so if you have not gotten the opportunity to go back and view all of Season 1, Micah, it was a special moment to be able to go back and hear some of those, because we still hadn't released the book when we were making these early. We were going through the last and final edits of the book when he was going through this. And so if you're new to the Strengths community or new to Theme Thursday and you hear us refer to Kurt Liesfeld, great opportunity to go back to Season 1. There's just some dynamite stuff in Season 1, by the way. We refer to it all the time, so make sure you go back and view those. They're available. The easiest way to get them is each week we make them available in the GWSW posts that we post on Sunday at the Coaches Blog, coaching.gallup.com. Okay, includer and competition.
So competition's an influencing theme, and it's all about benchmarks. It's all about using benchmarks to drive toward being number one. Competition, it's similar to includer, competition really doesn't like to get lost only on what I'm doing, but it's that ability to look left and right and think about how does this compare to others. So I like the thought of putting competition with includer because it helps us understand they're both very others focused. The difference here is competition is attracted to measurement, and that aspect isn't necessarily included in includer. But when we put them together, it sounds like this. You know that victory is more likely to occur when everyone on the team contributes. You try to make sure that all involved get credit for the win. I think about my friends with competition. I spoke with one of my coworkers here who has high competition, and she talks about being able to be the best cheerleader for her friends because she's aware of where are they competing, and she's aware of when are they winning, and she knows it's at the top of her mind all the time. You know, when is somebody going to get an award, and how do I show up and make sure that they feel my energy for them? And I think about that being a really good example, maybe of competition and includer.
Yeah, and maybe even when we think about those two together, looking at the losing team and including them in the win, right? Yeah. So hey, I know because there are, and at Gallup, man, we compete against each other all the time. It can be this environment is amazing when you get Gallup employees and competing against each other. It's down, right, from that standpoint. But I think of that includer then saying, there's a winner and a loser with competition, but then how do we include the losing team back into the bigger team for a complete victory? And I think that is powerful, right?
I wonder if includer brings to competition an increased awareness and desire to follow the rules, so that you really want to make it fair for everybody. Whereas if you had maybe ideation in competition, it's how can I find a different way that nobody's thought about to maybe bend the rules?
And that's Gallup.
Or a more creative, that is Gallup, a more creative approach to winning. Whereas includer in competition is maybe I want everyone to have a fair shot. And competition wants a fair win anyway, but I wonder if it expands that desire to make sure that everybody's able to throw their hat in the ring.
Yeah. Let's cover one more, includer and developer.
Yeah, super cool. So again, another relationship building theme. What developer is about is those incremental increases in experience, in effectiveness, really looking for how can I help people get better, even slightly better at what they're doing. When you blend these together, it sounds like this. You never allow your investment in the growth of others to be restricted or inhibited by prejudice or bias. I wonder if includer goes first in this, and sometimes and says, I notice somebody who could use some development. I'm blind to any reason that they haven't had it. Or maybe developer goes first and says, I'm with somebody and I see great potential in it, and I'm blind to any bias or prejudice as why they wouldn't be able to meet that potential.
Yeah. Micah, do you think three of the four we covered, three of them are in the relationship building theme themselves? Do you think, and with the crowd, this was a crowdsourced list, do you think there's anything to that, thinking about how these pair together, and most people wanted to know with inside that relationship building theme, the power of it?
Maybe. I like what you said earlier about includer being a real enhancer of other themes. It certainly stands by itself as a superhero, but with some of these other relationship building themes, I think it helps us understand how it it leaves your brain, because really includer it almost sounds strategic in some ways. We talked about it sounding like an influencing theme as well, but includer can reach out on its own. Includer doesn't need another relationship building theme to build a relationship with somebody, but I think sometimes it sounds as if it's more about the thoughtfulness side of things, and that might just be the raw side of it, like we talked about, of that awareness. Includer is also what's probably going to drive you to reach out and shake somebody's hand, but I think sometimes that's easier to understand if we can think about other relationship building themes working there with it. Interestingly, I mean, I chose individualization when I talked about complementary themes. It might also be good to challenge yourself with includer to think about who might be some good partners in other domains. So, perhaps it's a partner who has analytical, who can say, here's the data and the proof of, how are we reaching our audience and what kind of audiences are we reaching, who could bring a dispassionate approach to that inclusiveness that's a little bit more emotional. Or maybe it's thinking about an executing theme, somebody with maybe discipline who could say, we need to follow a set of standards. Can we make sure our standards are inclusive? So I don't know why all the relationship building themes bubble to the top. It might be because people have them.
Yeah. Well, an interesting observation too, both includer and developer, about, we talked last week about the me versus we, right? When raw mature in a raw state it's always about me, and not always, and then in the mature state it's often about the we. What's interesting about these two together is they're both about other people, right? These aren't themes about ourselves, but in how we treat or how we work with or what we do when we're bumped up against other people. And so, they're not all that way. We think of strategic, we think of a ranger, we think of a maximizer. Those are all very turned inward on us. How do we respond to things that we're thinking about? But the includer developer combo, and Debbie says today she feels like it's Debbie Day because she has developer number 5 as well. I think we've hit a couple of hers today in that. But interesting, these are both how we respond to other people. Individualization is the same way. And so we're going to cover that. We talked about it early, but we're going to cover that next week as well. But Micah, talk a little bit about that, and then it's pairing with includer.
Well, first of all, can you just look at the word individualization? Isn't it the most beautiful word ever? There's all those V's and Z's, and then there's tall letters and short letters all scrunched together. I love the visual of that word, and I think that helps us remember what it's really about. There's all the Scrabble letters that you'd never be able to use in this word here, and they work together. And individualization is about celebrating difference, celebrating uniqueness, and seeing how we work together. At least the together is when it's with includer here. So individualization by itself, a relationship building theme that's about noticing and anticipating the uniqueness of people. Sometimes I contrast this with consistency, where consistency thinks that the way to treat people fair is to treat everyone the same. Individualization thinks the way to treat people fair is to treat everybody as the individuals that they are. So individualization is about really getting into what makes people tick, and it can be just purely how do I continue to be fascinated by the people in the situation. It can also be how do I plan for the mess that people in the situation are going to bring. But when it's paired with includer, I think it's about how do I use my understanding of difference in order to help people see commonality. It sounds like this. Your broad tolerance and acceptance of all people is based on your deep appreciation of the uniqueness of each person. Powerful combination here.
Yeah, that is powerful, and I think one to unpack as a coach, to think through and unpack that because of the uniqueness in the people and yet the fairness of the groups, right? That idea of including, we got to get everybody in, and yet everybody's an individual, and that apparent thunderstorm that could develop between that warm and cold front when we think of them that way, and yet a very powerful combo. Because they can and are put together in an individual, right? We know that. We know that exists that way. So to be able to do both of those at the same time is being able to write with both your right and left hands. And so it's just, I think it's an incredible way of looking at it. And man, I'm so glad that Kurt took the time to think through these pairs and gave us these to kind of talk through. Just think about the hours, the hundreds of hours now that people are going to get an opportunity to spend time working through this with those people that they're coaching or the individuals, to really build and develop that better version of themselves, and then the power in teams and groups. I mean, I've said before, the power of StrengthsFinder is great in the individual, but it's exponentially powerful in the context of teams. And so exciting to see as people are using this and we hear your stories back. We hear these on the Facebook group and the Facebook page as you talk about it. It's heartwarming to hear some of your success stories. Maureen Monty, who most of you know, has just written a brand new book. It's about the power of the team coming together and winning. And so really excited for stories like that, and we love to hear those. So don't hesitate. If you've got great stuff you want to share, we love to hear those things. You can send us notes, and many of you do, and we always appreciate it.
Yeah, one of the things that we know from our research around strengths is that they grow best in the context of a relationship. So if you're thinking about, gosh, I just took StrengthsFinder, what do I do next? Or, I helped my client name it, what do I do next? One of the early and often things you could be thinking about is how do I involve other people in the development of my themes. That might be something as simple as sharing your report with somebody you love and asking them for some feedback. It also might be, as simple as making sure that you're having conversations with your partners around what are you attracted to and what do you need in order to have that thrive. So I always think, how do you plant strengths into your relationships if you really want to think about making it real for you and making it productive.
So we kind of bring a wrap on this theme, Includer. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I found a quote. I liked to look for quotes. It was interestingly enough, it was a little bit difficult to Google the right kind of words to come up with a quote for Includer, because when I talked about inclusiveness, I came up with a lot of very political things. And when I Googled hospitality, I came up with a lot of things about hotels. But I ended up looking for, I think I Googled something about invite others in. And that's how I came to this quote from Albert Schweitzer, who actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in the early 50s. And he says this: until he extends his circle of compassion to include all living things, man will not find himself peace. I love that word peace there with Includer, and I think it speaks to the fact that there's a constant awareness of exclusion and this beautiful constant mission to include.
Very good. Micah, we are well through all 34 of this year. For season 2, we're already starting to think about what season 3 will look like. It's kind of fun to hope and dream, and we've got some plans going. We'll be sharing those with you as we get closer to the end of the year, maybe even a little homework for you guys to do as we think about what we can do in season 3. We're glad that you're out here for season 2, and this has been a good journey for us. We've walked through each one of these with companion guides, and you guys can download those. If you head out to the coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com, there's the GWSW tab, and that tab has everything we've produced so far, and you can download those and get them access to it. Once you download them, keep them, hold on to them, make a file of them. That way you can get back to them again if you need them. I know it's a little bit of a hoop to jump through to fill in that information that we do. I don't have a great system to just get them all out to you in one blast, and we are heads down focused right now on a brand new coaches platform, and so all available resources, all power has been diverted to the new coaches platform. Jim gets what he can make himself at this point, and so we're just happy that you're participating along with us. I want to remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available as well at the Gallup Strength Center. Just got strengthcenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, and by the way, we've got a few open spots, Micah, in our blog, right? I mean, I think we could take a few more guest bloggers. Send us an email. Put guest blogger in the subject line, send that to coaching@gallup.com. That'll make its way over to Micah, and we'll kind of coach you through the process. We're not able to take everyone, but if you've got some great stuff that you'd like to share, we can put that up on the blog. The blog, Micah, continues to just rock and roll. We're seeing some great numbers out there, and we're excited for it. If you want to get some exposure or if you got something to say, we'd love to have you do that. Again, send us an email. Put guest blogger in the subject line, coaching@gallup.com. All the links on that coaches blog, by the way, all the links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes, and RSS feeds, our iPhone and Android apps, as well as the Weekly Strengths Wisdom program. I see GWSW, but that's what that means. Gallup Weekly Strengths Wisdom is available out there as well. It's on the coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. And, of course, you can find us on Twitter, and many of you have, but at StrengthsFinder. If you want to follow what's going on in the strengths movement and you're not following at StrengthsFinder on Twitter and you're a Twitter person, You should be doing that. Speaking of that, Micah has a new social media platform that she's using as well. Micah, you want to talk about that really quick?
I'll even pull it up and show it to you. So follow us on Instagram. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Our pictures have words on them as well, so they're worth today 1,006 words. You can follow me at Strengths Talk, and you'll get great, almost daily, little videos, visuals about the theme of the week, plus some great nuggets of information for if you have that theme. Here's something you might want to think about.
Awesome. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, we have that. All those options are available to you as well, and our courses are posted on our courses page. Really easy. Just go to courses.gallup.com, and if you have any questions, you want to send an email to somebody, we have a certification team as well. Just send it to certification@gallup.com, or fill out the contact page or the contact section right there on the live page. No way not to get a hold of us. It would be, if you're saying, Jim, I don't know how to get a hold of you guys, just go back 5 minutes and listen. There's tons of ways to get a hold of us.
30 seconds. That's all right. You need.
If you're interested in unlocking all 34 of your themes, sometimes we talk about, oh, it's in my top 10 or it's down in the bottom 34. We have that upgrade report available. It's at the Gallup Strengths Center, gallupstrengthscenter.com. We really recommend, if you're going to do that, you kind of get into the coach's world of tracking down a coach and get some help. All 34 can be a little overwhelming once you lock those. And the power is in someone coaching you. We believe everybody needs a coach. I have a coach. I use Micah as my coach from time to time as well. She's sometimes good at saying, how's it going? And then I'll say something. She says, no. How's it really going? And sometimes people need to ask those questions. We've got in our coaches directory at the Gallup Strengths Center, you can track it down and work with a coach as well. If you found this helpful, please share it. I want to remind everyone you can join us back here each Thursday for Theme Thursday. And with that, as soon as I can find the button, we'll say goodbye, everybody.